Welcome to the God is Not an Asshole podcast. If you are one of the many people done with religious dogmatism, hang on. You might sense transcendence, but your church or other faith community never seem to get off the ground. You realize that honoring your conscience means more than fitting in and keeping hard-to-explain rules? Hang on. You could probably think of the goodness in your tradition, and you tried your best to save that baby, but there's so much bathwater. Join your hosts, David Norman Moore Jr. in California and Kerry Connolly in New Jersey, who are collaborating to bring on guests who have found life on the other side of fundamentalism. Guests with stories of how they have liberated themselves from beliefs that divide us from each other. None of our guests' narratives are identical, but we hope you'll find something in common with each of them. We invite you to experience our common bond as we all inspire even more of us to embrace the true self.
Okay, well, this is Kerry here, and I am so excited to be here with my amazing co-host, David, and a guest that I am so excited to speak with because she and I go a long way back. We were just saying that we don't remember how we actually met, but we have collaborated together, and we are kind of each other's go-to people for some topics every once in a while. And I am so excited to introduce Lisa Alexander. She is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, a creator. She is a podcast host of the podcast This Woman Knows, and overall amazing creative woman. And I'm so excited to talk with you. Specifically today, I really want to talk about your upcoming film that you are working on called My Father, the Queen.
Yes.
So maybe, yes.
And you know, interestingly, I was aware of that film before Kerry mentioned it to me. I'm not sure exactly how.
That's
but
good.
You have a website where you can, register or what? I don't know.
Yes.
The proper
Yes.
term, but
yes.
I'm part of that.
Awesome.
Thank you so
I love
much.
that. I love
it too. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You are in the midst, as we are recording this, of a crowdfunding campaign. So
Yes.
we will definitely be sure to get this episode out in time so that people can participate in that very worthwhile effort. But tell us a little bit about this particular film. Tell us about the genesis of the film. Let's just start there.
So I recently found out that I am what's called a queer spawn. And not only am I a queer spawn, I am a queer spawn elder. So put some respect on my name. How about that?
Indeed.
All right.
So I did not know that there was this community of children of LGBTQ parents. So you can have either one or both parents be, LGBTQ, and there is a community. There are 6 million of us in the United States, a little over 6 million of us. And I just recently found out about this community. And what's always very interesting to me is when organizations, they come together and they build these communities and have these resources available. I went looking for resources immediately. I go to the website, look for all the things, and there are all these stories, and there's books, and there's TED Talks, and all these things, short videos. But there was nothing from Black or brown people in the resources. Nothing.
Interesting.
That's what I thought.
Well, let me say, Lisa.
Yes.
I am not the spawn of queer folks, but I want to join this group.
It's such a cool community. And there's the organization called Collage, and it was originally for children of lesbian and gay couples, I think is what the original name was. But then, of course, as the community grew, it's just called Collage at this point, and they got rid of what it actually meant. And it was primarily to protect the kiddos because it wasn't, still isn't, a safe space out here in the community and in the world for, the kiddos and even kids that are in the community themselves. And so that's why it was created. And it's It's a wonderful organization. It is at least 30 years old. So we're talking 19. Yes. And I just found out about it, and I am 54 and I just found out about this, but it's a wonderful organization and it's so supportive. And I'm grateful that I found it, and I've been able to connect. So I went to my first Queer Spawn meeting, about a month ago.
That's awesome. I love it.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
So this is like PFLAG. This is like the other side of PFLAG. Parents of lesbians and gays.
So this is for the kiddos because we have a unique story to tell, right? We have a story to tell. And so that's, a friend of mine read my script, and this is when my script was maybe 5 pages, 10 pages. It was just an idea. And he told me, he says, Lisa, I think you really have something here because this story has not been told, and especially by a Black or brown body. And from that, from his push and, just telling Lisa, go for it. I did. And now we're up to a feature film. It's 70 plus minutes, not quite 90, but 70 minutes, because I believe in when you're done telling a story, be done telling a story. There's no need to drag a thing on. It's like, get in, get out, do what you're supposed to do. That's just me. And so that's kind of how the film came about, because I thought this story really needed to be told. And it is a Black woman's story, a Black daughter's story of what it is to grow up with a closeted gay man, and then the trauma that they both experience because of societal pressures and norms. And then what does a path towards healing look like? And so that's what the film is about. We get to see this experience through her eyes. Now we'll learn about, the father, his name is Walter. We'll learn about him and his experiences, but this is her story and her truth.
I love that. I want to go in so many different directions, but I also know because I know you and I know a little bit of the story of the film that there is the intersection of the church in this story. So can we talk a little? I know, we've had those conversations, but let's record some of that now. So
there is no way that you can have a conversation about a Black family, especially if you're talking about in the 70s, 60s, 70s. The Black church has been the cornerstone of Black families since, right? Since enslaved peoples were brought into this land, right? And so it is so important that we have the conversation about what's been taught from behind the pulpit of our churches, and then how it impacts families. So I've always wanted to, what I want to show is how what's being taught affects real people, how it impacts real lives, and what the cost of that is. Because what we're experiencing, I had one person tell me, they said, Lisa, the church has to come to terms with the collateral damage that is ours. And so this is her story. This is what happened to her. There is no judgment in the movie. There is just what is. There are remakes. We go into certain church scenes, and these are messages that I have sat in, that have come across the pulpit, that we're going to share. This is what the LGBT community faces should they decide to go into a house of worship.
Do you think that intersection of the specificity of the Black church experience has something to do with why collage is very white?
It could be. No, they do have.
I don't know.
So
not that white churches have done a better job with the LGBT. Like, I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. I just know that there's.
But there might be. I think, Kerry, what you're saying is there might be kind of this need to not be ostracized
further.
By Black folks, right? Being, as Lisa said, this is our community in so many ways.
Yes.
It's ours.
Yeah.
It's ours. So I know the collage does they are diverse. I will say that they are diverse. The other organization that I'm looking at, they are diverse. The people that want to come forward and tell their stories are not predominantly Black and brown. They are.
I see.
Everybody else. But the organization, I do want to give a shout out to, because they do have a spot for Black collagers, Black queer spawn. We have a space in a group.
Thank you for correcting me, because that's an important correction. Thank you.
We do have a space within the broader community. But when it comes to stories, and we know that stories are so important, we know that representation matters. We know that seeing someone that looks like me having a similar experience makes me feel not so isolated, and this wasn't just me, and that maybe there is help or hope for me, or there is a coming out or healing that can happen for me, because our situations, while now they may not be identical, but they are similar.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
When Kerry used the word a couple of times, intersection.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, Lisa, if you perceive a place in it, as we talk about intersectionality in the way that was launched by Kimberly Crenshaw years ago, the movement of equity and justice requires various players from various places. And I'm wondering how you might see that with being having a father as a queen.
So I can share this. There is a line in the film where our main character, her name is Kelly, and Kelly is having a conversation with her boyfriend, and they're going through some things, some of Walter, her father's things, and she makes the statement. She says, I wish he would have risked hell versus creating hell.
Wow.
For our family, for me and for our family. I wish he would have risked it.
You're reminding me, Desmond Tutu, his daughter, who we will be hosting, as well. Well, Tutu, she's a lesbian woman in a relationship of many years. And I remember long before I knew that he was so inclusive. And I remember him saying that if he goes to heaven and there are no queer people, he would rather go to hell. And as an Anglican bishop, he said that.
No. Wow.
Yes.
That does not get a lot of play. That clip, that's buried somewhere, because that one we don't get to see too often. But that's a line in the movie, because for so much as we talk about the family structure and how important family is, and to have a member of the family be so wounded, to be so traumatized because they are not able to be themselves authentically, then you get to see how mental health plays into this, and how it impacts a family, and how it impacts relationships, and how no relationship is ever the same, So we get to see all of this in the movie. We get to see the mental health aspect. We get to see the intersectionality of the church, and how do you begin to heal from all of these daddy issues? And then how does Walter, how does he begin to even look at healing? One of the things that's really, I think, important to the film is that we say that he chose to remain closeted. So you remember coming of age, 60s, 70s, 70s, 80s, he was coming of age, right? And we say he chose to remain closeted, but did you really have a choice to come out of said closet?
Right.
Because in that time period, who would hire you if you were out loud and proud? And then if you happened to be flamboyant, who was going to hire you? Where were you going to live? Because who was going to rent to you? And then
not to mention just walking down the street is an issue of safety.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're Black and, there's talk about intersectionality, right? There's
a conversation, my wife and I were talking about this just a couple of days ago. The encounters that we've had with some white folks who have adopted Black children.
Yes.
you know, and it turns out to be, the Colin Kaepernick story all over again. And, why can't you just be grateful, so as to just repress everything that you are and you have experienced. And I see that kind of in your situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just be grateful. Suck it up, do what you have to do kind of thing. And isn't it shameful that that's what we tell victims to do? What we tell hurting people to do, just suck it up and get over it. It is what it is. Do what you got to do. I think that's cruel. I think that's very cruel.
In the work that I do a lot of reading about trauma and complex PTSD and all that. And, one of the Dr. Nicole LaPera, who's known as the holistic psychologist on Instagram. She's great. I would highly recommend you follow her. But she talks about trauma as not necessarily these big, huge events in our lives. Of course, that could be it. But it could also be the daily, the daily self-betrayal that you have to engage in order to find belonging, right? Mm-hmm. Because belonging is, and I use that in my work a lot, for lots of reasons, but this idea of I'm going to have to, belonging is such a core need of every human being, right? Yes. And if we have to betray and deny and stuff down core parts of who we are in order to achieve belonging, that's just a recipe for disaster. And it's going to come out eventually.
Said every Black woman who works in a predominantly white space every day.
Yes.
And so part of this is also, how could he parent his children in a way that they needed to be parented if he's always stuff? He didn't have the bandwidth or the emotional capacity to give them what they needed because he wasn't getting what he needed. I mean, there's only so much you can just keep stuffing down, and I can't be who I am. And then to be always told that, one, you're an abomination, that something's wrong with you. And then remember, the American Psychological Association said that you were mentally ill. You had a mental illness up until 1974. And then they go, oh, no, that's not what we meant. We're going to retract that statement. But to just be always told something's wrong with you, you're an abomination, you're sinful. And oh my gosh, one of the things, I just read Billy Porter's book not too long ago, finished his book. And I'll have to do the clean version of this because the version in the book.
You don't have to.
This is not a family show.
That's okay.
But that is an incredible book. I thoroughly enjoyed his book. But he said that when you're taught for so long that the relationships that you're in, that the love that you give and receive is an abomination, then it's really hard to form loving relationships or real relationships. And then it just becomes about the act. So you don't really allow yourself to fall in love because it's an abomination and it's just physical and it's just about the act. And so in his book, he said that he even struggled early on in his marriage, which we know now that he and his partner, his husband are getting ready to divorce. He said that early on in his marriage that it was really difficult receiving love because of what he had been taught in the church, because of all the things that society said, it's dirty, it's evil, it's filthy. And it's like, so you couldn't even form real relationships. It was just about the hookup.
So even if you actually do have the courage to go out and embody the life and who you really are, you can't actually receive the intimacy, the benefits of that intimacy and that bonding and that belonging, because you still have this internal dialogue that you suck and you're shameful for some reason.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. That's so painful.
I want to find ways to connect your story, your experience, and that community specifically with more people. And of course, I'm hoping that this podcast will be a part of that. But I think that we can find more ways to do that. And I'm thinking of, and Kerry knows that during quarantine, I crossed paths with people near and far who came out during that period.
Wow.
11 people
Wow.
at first, and then it grew as I began to make it known that, and what I've found is that many people who have a church background, they want to talk to a pastor. You know, they don't need my approval, but they want to talk to a pastor who is, who gets it, right?
Yeah.
And in one case, a pastor. Now my roots are Church of God in Christ, you know.
Hey, PAW, Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. Y'all know y'all not going.
All right.
You ain't going to heaven. Y'all know y'all ain't right. You got to be baptized in Jesus' name, sir. You know how this works.
That's another podcast. So, yes, yeah, I'm familiar with PAW, but anyway, this is what we have in common, what we're talking about today.
Absolutely.
And one of our pastors, because of social media, who was, following me, was just amazed that a Church of God in Christ pastor could think like I do. And he drove for hours to come and meet with me and to come out.
Oh, wow.
And he has children, right? Yes. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to say their ages or anything like that.
He has queer
because
spawn.
He does. Exactly.
He has queer spawn.
That's what is being brought to the fore of my consciousness as I'm listening to you, is that his story is probably all over the place. And we need to reach out to these kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is, there's a reckoning, because at the end of the day, kids just want their parents, father, mother, moms. We just want that relationship. And I don't know of a little girl who does not want the love, the validation, the attention of her father. I don't know of one.
Okay, and the damage that it does when you don't get it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So Lisa, I don't know if I am going to make sure that he gets a copy of this when it's ready.
Yes.
I don't know if he will share it with his kids, but if you wanted to say something to his kids, what would you say?
I would tell them that you are perfectly okay. Your father is okay. And that love really will trump all, and to, ask questions, to not, this whole secrecy thing. And, a lot of times, especially in Black households, and we're coming out of this a little bit with these the new generation, Gen Z, even some Gen Xers, we're trying to do better with this whole children should be seen and not heard, and allowing children to have a voice and to ask questions and to get a proper response, age appropriate, of course, but that it's okay. It's like, boo, it's y'all gonna be all right. Y'all gonna be all right. There are communities that are willing to embrace you and to love up on your families. I don't know what the marital status is right now, but that healing is absolutely possible. And this you do not have to go through what I went through. You don't have to,
for example,
you don't have to lose your father in the process. You don't have to not get that relationship or lose that relationship or have him be so wounded because he can't be who he is, that he can't parent you, that he can't love you, that he, there was a rejection on my part. There was a rejection that happened. And so that doesn't have to happen for these kiddos, especially if the father gets the support he needs.
Do you think though that some sort, one of the things that I always tell my coaching clients, for example, is emotions are always valid. Your perspective might not be. The perspective that's feeding them might not be, right? So, and I say that because I think sometimes we feel guilty for the emotions that we're feeling, especially when it comes to our parents, right? Like if we're, so would it be fair to say that it's okay for a kid who's discovering this about their parent to feel angry, right? To have anger maybe because their marriage or their family is being disrupted, their parents' family is being disrupted, and that's something that can cause anger, or you kept a secret from me and I didn't know, or you haven't been here for me because you've been so wrapped up. So I think, would it be fair to say that anger is an okay emotion to have, and it can exist
absolutely
in love as well?
At the same time, you are absolutely allowed to feel how you feel. If it's anger, feel the anger, because for some of us, it's a grief, because we're grieving. We no longer had what we had, and there may be a sense of loss. And so we know with the grieving process comes the denial, comes the anger, the negotiating, all the steps that we go through in a grieving process. God, if you could just make my parent normal, if you can just put my family back together, all the negotiating and the bargaining that we do, all of that's very real, very valid, and allow yourself to go through the process. Allow yourself to have the emotions, but know that emotions are fleeting. And how I feel today, I might not feel tomorrow. Today, I might feel like a cheeseburger with onion rings and all the things. And tomorrow, it's like, you know what? We should have a salad. We should do some balance of some things. Emotions change, and what we think we want today could change tomorrow. And that's okay. That's okay.
Are you familiar, Lisa, with the TV series 911?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've seen it.
Okay.
I'm not a big TV watcher.
Well, you know what? I stream, lots of things, but this would not fit the description of something that I would be interested in. And I would have just passed it by. But then I noticed that the producer was Angela Bassett and that she was starring in it.
Okay.
And, Angela Bassett, right?
We'll watch. Yes. We'll give this a shot.
But the story, she is, police something, some kind, I don't, she has some position. I think she's the chief. Yeah. She's the chief of police, and her husband is, a firefighter, an EMT.
Okay.
But that's her current husband. But the story starts with her husband who was gay.
Oh.
And they have children. They have a teenage daughter and a boy who may be a teenager, but he's pretty young. And it follows the story of their breakup. And I don't know if you know that Angela Bassett also is Church of God in Christ.
I did not know that.
Yes. So,
wow.
So it's as though she's sending a message, right? By producing this series.
Yes.
Because they all stay and they all remain friends. And the father who moved out and moved in with a man, and then later she finds a man, another man. All four of them are friends in the way that they work this out. I just thought you'd like to know. Yeah.
It absolutely can. It absolutely can happen when people are willing, when they are open, when they are open to other ways of living and being, and saying that it's all okay, and that for the kids' sake, we're going to still be able to work this out. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I think also recognizing the beautiful diversity of God's creation, right? Recognizing, I think, and that's where it comes down to is that God, whoever you think or whatever, or however you think creation got here, that there is beautiful diversity, and that, in my opinion, is intentional and gorgeous. And, and if we can get to that foundation, and also I'm thinking as I'm hearing this story, and I love this story, and I know of so many stories where, a partner has come out and then it all works out wonderfully. Right. But there are so many stories. And I have a dear friend who I'm actually hoping will be a guest. I've already spoken with him, and we just have to get him scheduled. But he came out, and to this day, he is now married to a man. He has been divorced from his wife. He is married to a man. And to this day, his ex-wife still sends him text messages that say, I am praying for you. You are still my husband. I will still be, I'm waiting for you. And
Wow.
I have faith that God is going to, and he's just like, you have to move on.
Wow.
You have to move on. And the pain that causes, right? Both everybody, all of them.
Yeah.
Because here she is years later,
In denial,
waiting
Wow.
for his return when she could
Wow.
be going out living her life, right? So just as awesome as it is to hear that there are those stories and we need to model them, I think we also have to recognize that
Absolutely.
there are those stories that don't work out that way, and it causes so much pain
Yes.
for so many people.
My Father the Queen is one of those stories where it did not.
Yes.
It did not work out. Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you so much for being here today. We are people who have left behind performance-based religion and the shame that comes with it. Maybe you have a personal liberation story to tell, and we want to know about it. Please contact us on Twitter at God is not an asshole, or text 805-703-8393, because the world needs to know that God is not an asshole.